Next, let's queer up trans rights. New survey shows transgender people are trying to escape Florida. New data released by the Human Rights Campaign reveals the virtually universal negative impact discriminatory legislation is having on LGBTQ+ adults. Don't say gay laws, bathroom bills, and gender-affirming care restrictions for both minors and adults are negatively affecting a large majority of LGBTQ+ Americans. For trans people in states like Florida, the laws are an existential threat driving them to leave their homes. 8 in 10 transgender and non-binary adults in Florida want to move or already have taken steps to move as a result of gender-affirming care bans. The same number would consider leaving the country altogether. More than half of trans people and 28% of other LGBTQ+ adults want to find work in a different state due to gender-affirming care bans. More than 36% of other LGBTQ+ adults say they want to or plan to move out of Florida because of gender-affirming care bans. And almost 80% of other LGBTQ+ adults report that bans on gender-affirming care make them feel less safe as a member of the community. For transgender and non-binary adults, that number rises to more than 9 out of 10 people. According to the HRC, there are currently 21 states across the U.S. that have enacted laws banning gender-affirming care. Collectively, they're home to nearly 97,000 transgender youth aged 13 to 17. I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Lexi was talking about, going into other states and having them kind of feel sorry for us. And also what you're saying is that why don't you just leave? This is my state. You get out.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel for the past few years after gay marriage was passed, I feel like there was a little bit of a golden period where we all had such a hopeful outlook on what our country was going towards. And then this has just come, you know, slapped us in the face. But I really feel like we are moving the pendulum, swinging it back in the other direction. And now that some of these...
You're hopeful of that.
I am very hopeful. I actually think that it's starting right now. I think that with all of this politics and all the MAGA world, I think they're starting to show their true self. I think with the abortion, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, there is a huge backlash that has just started now. I do think that the worst has kind of, hopefully, has come to pass. And now I think it's retribution time. And I think we're starting right now. And I can't wait.
That's interesting.
You know, there's a new study that was released this week that gender-affirming surgeries tripled over a 3-year period. For I think it was 16 to 19 or 17 to 20. So clearly there is a need. And this was before everybody started getting riled up. So people were starting to come out and feel better about getting their surgeries. It was available to them. My question is, to what end? What is the purpose of banning these laws? And putting aside insurance issues, and yes, it should be covered medical care, but just putting that aside, what other elective surgeries are being banned specifically state by state? Are they going to come in and say, no, you can't get a nose job, and no, you can't get something repaired on you that needs cosmetically to look better? We're not banning any of those. We're not banning, I was going to say vasectomies, but I don't want to give them any ideas on, because they're so pro-reproduction. But there is just no point to this except to gain votes and step on people.
And, you know, I think it's very important to add a little clarification to your observation, because first, the increase that took place over those 3 years that you're talking about were not minors. Those are adults making decisions of their own medical care. And whose right is it to decide that surgical affirming care is not a decision that an adult can make first? They blur the line to say, well, see, we're seeing surgeries increase, and then they try to extrapolate it to minors. That is not happening. Minor surgical involvement for the trans community is virtually non-existent. Hormone therapy is a different issue. And as it relates to hormone therapy, whose right is it, if we're going to talk about parental rights in Florida, at what point do you go, okay, we advocate for parental rights until we disagree with the parent, which is exactly what's happening on gender-affirming hormone treatment for minors. Now, whether you agree on hormone therapy or not, the parents are involved with the medical professionals and the minor. Why don't parents get to make that decision along with their child? It's because the radical rights are disagreeing with it. One other thing that I think is important. First off, HRC proves why the HRC is so important to our community. The statistical analysis of saying, let's look at the results of what's happening in Florida is so critically important. The headline of this story is the results of how many in our community in Florida want to leave Florida. If we were able to do it, we're not, but if we were able to do it, this survey reporting says 520,000 Floridians would leave the state of Florida if they could. That's the headline. 38 out of every 100 LGBT in Florida would leave if they could. 520,000. Can you imagine the economic impact, the turmoil that it would create for school bus drivers and servers in restaurants and people that are working in hotels and. It would be economic chaos. Nobody would advocate that.
No.
Oh, wait. Last week, the chairman of the Republican Committee of Florida, the GOP Republican chairman of the state of Florida, said, if you don't like it and you oppose what we're doing in LGBT issues, including don't say gay, don't let the door hit you in the ass as you leave Florida. Who is advocating 520,000 Floridians to leave the state of Florida? The chairman of the GOP of Florida. It's
Disgusting.
unbelievable.
Can I also just make one other point, that this is so anti-Republican, that Republican principles, having small government not being in people's lives,
Right.
and that there are already laws on the books when it comes to the Hippocratic Oath of medical professionals. We have the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, that both recognize that this is a situation to be dealt with personally and individually, and the role of politicians to get involved in between your healthcare provider is completely anti-Republican.
Yeah.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show, brought to you from Happening Out Television Network. We operate in the same model of PBS and NPR, but for the LGBTQ+ community. We educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community, with more than 100,000 a week watching us on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the story going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.